In 1948, a ship named Empire Windrush landed here at Tilbury, and on board were men and women from the Caribbean that answered Britain's call to come and help rebuild the country after the Second World War. They arrived with just their suitcases, and they stepped into a country that probably didn't really welcome them to start with. But they worked hard, and with sheer determination they established their communities, and their legacy has resulted in our modern way of life here in Britain. And it all began here next to the Thames as they stepped off the ship onto the quayside.
The ship was called HMT Empire Windrush. It was built by the Germans as a cruise liner, taken in war and renamed by Britain. And then, in 1948, it became something else entirely, a vessel of hope. It left Jamaica with 1,027 passengers, and over 800 of them were from the Caribbean, answering Britain's call to come help rebuild. The war was over, the cities were rubble, and Britain needed workers, nurses, and hands. So it turned to its own colonies.
Britain needed workforce. Those soldiers that fought in the Second World War went back to their homelands. Remember, these are young men. Some of them never returned. The education system within most of the Caribbean countries and islands, they spoke the Queen's English. They were educated in British values. They knew more about Britain than they knew about their own countries. And when they got back to their countries and islands, remember, if Britain was part of the empire, these countries were part of the empire, their countries were in disarray as well. There was nothing there for them. From newspapers to radio articles to the movies that Britain needed people from the Caribbean diaspora. Doctors, nurses, builders, technicians, laborers, farmers. They all were needed for one or another purpose.
I was born in Jamaica, came to England when I was 9, 14th of November 1964. You know, we live in a very sort of middle-class neighbourhood in East Kingston. It's called Harbourview. All the houses were nice and new. I couldn't understand why we moved to England, really. Never got it. It was November, middle of winter, cold, snow. Everywhere, all the houses looked like factories because all the houses had chimneys and the smoke coming out all the chimneys before the days of central heating. Yeah, grim, and sort of wondered why did we leave like a nice house in Harbourview and come here? My major problems was at school. When I started school, I was probably the first black kid in my school. I had a lot of fights, almost every day. The cultural thing really kicked in more when you was a teenager and you started to face real racism as a teenager, you know? Because our generation was the first generation that had the stop and search, the sus laws, you know? And we might be just standing chatting and police would pull up on us and say, you know, oh, you're standing outside this shop, you know, you're suspected of planning to break into the shop or some stupidness like that they'd use, you know.
When that decision was made, £28, 10 shillings had to be paid to make that journey, paid to come to England. The Windrush ship picked those people up to come here. That's why you see them in their lovely suits and ties and dresses. It's because they came to support their Queenie. They were excited because they believed that Britain was full of kings and queens, prince and princesses, even dragons and fairies, a mystical place. I'm sure you've heard it was paved with gold. But then in reality, docking at Essex, Tilbury, on the 21st of June, but weren't allowed to come off the boats until their papers were actually stamped. When they saw the smoke coming out of chimney pots, when they saw the snow on the ground, when they felt the frosty welcome, all dressed up in their Sunday best, England, England is the place to be. England, England is the place for me. Well, that wasn't reality.
Born in Jamaica, 1932. come to England 1962. The problem is, as we know that every West Indian island are very poor. And when you grow up as a young man or a young girl, you want to lift, not down. So that's why we travel around, to get better in life. I find my 75 pounds and I come over here. So the last job that I done, I remember I earned 100 pounds. 21 days it take me to get here, you know, on the water, on the ship. I come here just want to spend 5 years to get myself high up in mason work. But through the place was so damn cold, I decided to work in a factory. Because when we first come over here, you know, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. So what we, the black people, do, we show a partner and help each other so that we could buy our own home.
Houses, up and down, knocking on doors for a room. They weren't welcome. Jobs that were available, they weren't welcome. Shops that they stood in the queue and other people would come in and they were served first. Going to school and being told, show me your tail. And the child was confused. What tail are you referring to? When you say to yourself, they didn't have to come. You're right, they didn't have to come. They came because they had a duty to Britain. They felt they had a duty to Britain, to build Britain up. And still, we were taught to keep the stiff upper lip. Seeing our parents take us to Sunday school, and we weren't really welcome. You had to create a house to have a place where you could worship, to keep your faith, until you could have a church of your own. To go to a bank to ask for a loan or to invest, and you weren't allowed. Welcome to Britain, welcome to Britain. On those cold, bleak days, when you left some beautiful islands, remember the servicemen were young in the Second World War who did not return. The countries, their islands were broken, and still they came again and again to support Britain. And we're here still now. That's what I say is resilience.